Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started in just a minute. Welcome, welcome. As people are jumping in, I'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. All right. Got some fellow Californians here. I love that. And I see some familiar names in the chat. So it's great to see so many of you, people I worked with a long time ago, people I have gotten in touch with now. Great to see you. Amazing. We have folks chiming in from Europe, all over the US. That's awesome. Mexico, Philippines. How wonderful. India. That's fantastic. All right. Oh my gosh, just based on the chat, there must be everyone jumping on right now. So, all right, we can go ahead then and get started. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Tracy st.dic. I'm the global head of talent at Zapier. So I lead talent acquisition, talent intelligence, attraction, employer brand, partnerships, internal mobility, everything with kind of talent in the title. I've been at Zapier for about 3.5 years, and my team is about 20 people, just to give you some context, and we're serving an 800-person company. Zapier is global, and we're fully remote. And I'm just so pleased and honored to have you join us. So first, a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and we will email you the recording after the webinar, we promise. We had a ton of questions pre-submitted, but we should also have time for live Q&A. So throughout the webinar, please go ahead, enter in your questions into the little Q&A box or tab at any time. Please drop them there and not the chat box so it doesn't get lost. But you can also upvote any questions from other attendees, and that's going to help us prioritize when we get into the live time. The other thing is, if you run into any technical issues, just simply refresh your page. That usually solves just about everything. And we also recommend using Google Chrome as your browser. We've found that on this platform that works a little bit better. But I simply cannot go any further without thanking the numerous folks who contributed and led so much of the work you're going to see today. I think that automation and AI assumes that robots are running things when in fact the fundamental units of the work are still people and amazing teams. And none of what you're seeing today would have been possible without the folks on this slide, as well as many other people at Zapier doing a lot of this work all in concert. So thank you to them. And I know a number of them are on the call that will also help with questions later. Okay, so where are we going today? This is all shaped based on the awesome questions submitted by you all. So we group them topically. We'll try to hit on as many themes as possible, but we'll start first with AI fluency and hiring, which was our most requested topic. Then we'll go big picture, recruitment and productivity, AI use cases and impact to get a bit more granular, show you some of the workflows. Then we'll go on to more of the tactical strategies. And then we have, of course, the live Q&A, where I'll be in the hot seat with all your questions. All right, let's jump in. So starting with AI fluency and hiring. Okay, so when I talk to TA and HR leaders about recruiting in this world of AI, we know that we have a responsibility to the organization to ensure that we're equipped for the future. But I think for people and talent acquisition teams, it's really this dual responsibility, right? As an org leader, we have to ensure the whole company is equipped for an AI first future. But then as a team leader, you're also ensuring that your TA or your HR function is equipped and up-leveled in their professional skills so that they can do their current role and they can also be well equipped for future roles in talent or people as well. And we got really good questions about both. So I do want to just start big picture with the first one, which is stewarding the organization and sharing a little bit of the behind the scenes of why and how we spent 5 weeks in this past spring implementing an AI fluency bar for 100% of our hires. So we're going to get detailed. Again, you don't have to take screenshots. You will get this deck, but we just wanted to pull the curtain back a little bit. So to give you some context, in spring 2025, this past spring, just 2 years after our CEO, Wade, issued a code red to start adopting AI, our chief people officer, Brandon Samut, who's on the call, was initiating the change for our organization from AI adoption to AI transformation. So I'll stop there for a second. What does that mean? AI adoption to us means, how do I use AI for my own personal or team productivity. It's the neat use cases that save us a minute on repeatable tasks or maybe a few hours on a weekly basis. That's all really, really important. And it can absolutely supercharge your workforce. Don't get me wrong. But it is layering AI on top of traditional workflows. That's adoption. AI transformation, I like to think about that as reimagining how value gets delivered, including the who or the what, as well as the how, and who is best positioned to do that work. So that is really thinking through, okay, we have a full hiring process. Instead of just making the process more efficient, which we can do with AI adoption, how do we actually transform what that process looks like in a new AI-enabled world? And that is the much harder piece. So while Brandon was working with our head of L&D to transform our current workforce at Zapier to 100% AI usage daily and pushing into real transformation, I really wanted to meet him in the middle. I said, okay, if you're going to do that and you're going to weave that into performance reviews and going to kind of work backwards, I'm going to start from the beginning as your head of talent. And we're going to think about the employee life cycle from talent attraction, hiring, and onboarding. And if we meet in the middle, then we'll have gotten a bit further in transforming the whole org. So we did that in about 4 weeks with some implementation lingering. So let's say 6 weeks across our 800-person org. So what did I do to get this going? So first, I spoke with our individual execs about all of their needs for their teams and how they'd set the bar for AI fluency. Based on those convos, we decided to assess for 3 different things, which you can see on the slide. Mindset, which we say is clear evidence that the candidate is eager and willing to experiment with AI tools, and they see the value of adding them into their workflows. And obviously, very excited to take on this journey with us. Strategic acumen, or AI strategy, we say is how AI could or should not shape their work in the specific role or function that they're in. So this is about being really future looking, being able to envision how AI could be game changing in their work. And the third thing that we assess for is AI builder skills. Those are like the technical skills, and they're a bit more specific to the role. So obviously an AI engineer, you're going to need different skills than a tax accountant. But we believe that there should be a baseline level of ability to understand and experiment with different tools, even more accessible ones like custom GPTs and stuff like that. So once we figured out, okay, those are the things that we are going to be assessing for, then my working group got pulled together multiple prototypes of rubrics for vetting with recruiters and the L&D team and execs before landing those definitions. I think we can show the definitions on this next slide too. So first, we have unacceptable. These are the people who aren't regularly using AI or not using it for any particular purpose, like the just for fun, create a bedtime story for my 4-year-old, or those who are skeptical or resistant. And that would not work at Zapier. Capable is our new minimum expectation for now. This means people are using AI for a purpose. They're using it personally or professionally. They can articulate why they use it, why it helps them in really concrete terms, and that we're seeing evidence of experimentation and learning more over time. So I use ChatGPT this way, now I use it this way. I'm really excited to use it this way, for example. Adoptive means they use AI regularly. So these are candidates who use it daily. They use it for clear purposes for ROI. They are building workflows to save time. They are using it as a thought partner. They're maybe even starting to say, this is how I'm doing it with my team. That is where adoptive is. And then transformative, which is the highest level on our rubric, are folks who can articulate very clearly an AI first mindset. So they solve every problem thinking about how might AI be able to help? How can we rebuild workflows with AI? How can we scale this to teams in the org? And they're able to share how their work is fundamentally different now. And it's a very, very high bar. I often say these are the candidates who could not do their work without AI anymore. So this is our rubric. We also are really committed to revisiting this at a minimum every 3 months, because as we know, the field is really dynamic. And there's also, just so you know, there's really great examples of this from looking at how does this play out in product or people or support or things like that. That's all within our blog and on our website. And we've recently released some department specific examples, so you can kind of go in there and check it out. But then to move on, okay, so what did I do as a TA leader from the hiring side? How did we actually do this? So next, we determined 4 consistent points in the hiring process where we could get signal from candidates. And honestly, just from a change management perspective and as a team leader, I focused on where I could easily get strong calibration. So I knew that was my recruiters. I knew that was the execs. And then, last we kind of rolled out the skills tests because that required a larger number of interviewers to be calibrated. So that's how we were able to get it out so fast, working with the groups and the parts of the funnel where I knew we could calibrate quickly. So we look at 4 places. In the initial application, we're looking for mindset, strategy, and builder skills. In the initial screen, my recruiters are primarily looking for mindset and sort of assessing where people are so they can give guidance. Then in the skills test, that's where it gets very specific for departments. We're looking at strategy and technical skills, and that varies per role. And then finally, in the exec interview, it's putting it all together and kind of assessing for all those things. So just to pull back the curtain even more, here are some actual examples of Zapier's default skills tests for non-technical roles. So this would be ops, people, finance, things like that. I feel fine sharing this, by the way, because these are candidate facing. They'll get out there in the world eventually, and each department does modify it a bit, but you get kind of a first glance at what this looks like. The key here, though, is that the live conversation in the interview really matters. So we have different skills for maybe those that are earlier in their career, individual contributors. We have a different one that's really focused on strategy. That's more for our leaders, team leaders, et cetera. But in the conversation, we're actually really interested in seeing what they built and them explaining it in depth. And the reason that we focus more on strategy for specific workflows is that we believe we can't teach you how to think creatively about what's possible. Candidates also know their own function and workflows better than we do. So they're going to be the ones who can say, yeah, I would use AI in these ways, right? So we really, really care about the strategy piece. And for that reason, we're also tool agnostic. So sometimes I've gotten the question, do you require candidates to use X tool in your process? Well, unless they have to do something specific to Zapier, we're very tool agnostic because we believe we can teach you to use Zapier. We can teach you to use any specific tools that our organization has a preference about. And we care about the curve, not the snapshot. Our CTO says this all the time. We're really looking at candidates that come into Zapier, how they will be able to grow and learn with us on this AI journey, not just where they are today, because the tech is changing so rapidly. So I think that's a really important piece when we think about assessing AI fluency. You don't want to anchor on candidates using specific tools, but really the reasoning behind why, when, how they might use it, why they might not use it, and showing us that they can get in and start experimenting to build and things like that. And then finally, for our implementation, this really important piece, to make our hiring process inclusive while also ensuring new hires can meet our AI fluency expectations, we implemented points of guidance also all throughout the process. We wanted to raise the expectation, but we also wanted to raise the level of support so we could meet them. And this is for internal Zapians and for candidates. Like, if we're going to raise the expectations on AI fluency, how do we ensure that people have the tools to meet that? So we added a section on AI fluency mindsets on our job page. We have this in all of our job descriptions outlining what that bar is, and in some cases, what tools may be required for certain roles with certain higher standards for AI fluency. In the application confirmation email you can see on the screen, it shares why we think AI fluency is important, and it gives resources to build up their fluency. A Zapier quick start guide. We even, reference Anthropic's AI fluency guide. So we want people to have the opportunity to meet these expectations. And then finally, recruiters tee up the expectations in the recruiter screen conversation. So that's why we assess it in the recruiter screen. Then they're able to say, okay, after gaining this initial signal, they can tell candidates advice, or they can share guidance about how they might want to continue to up their AI usage, even just within the hiring process, to prepare for their future interviews. And honestly, I love that. I love that we measure it at the beginning and at the end, because if somebody comes in with a lower level of AI fluency, and then by the end of that process has really grown in their abilities in just a matter of a few weeks, like, I think that's really telling. I want more folks like that who are eager to learn and eager to jump in and experiment. So that's a very helpful signal as well. So, all right. Hopefully that was a helpful overview, you all. We just had so many questions about this, and I tried to answer them sort of in one full swoop, but we'll also share out more of these materials, the default skills tests and things like that after the AMA. But now we also had another 142 other questions, specifically about leading HR and TA teams and our implementation. So we've talked about organizational stewardship and the organization. Now let's kind of hone in and talk about HR and TA teams. Okay, so first we'll start with big picture recruitment and productivity. So this was a question submitted by CW. As global head of talent, what is the cost to your organization if you don't embrace AI? Awesome question. I think the cost is huge. As we talked about, we have a responsibility to the organization to ensure that we're equipped for the future. But that second responsibility, which is ensuring your TA function is equipped for an AI first future, is also really important. Our chief people officer, Brandon Samut, I heard him say one time that at this point, it is leadership malpractice to not upskill your own team with AI fluency skills, because they're just not going to be competitive in the future for any other job. And it's also not serving your own organization well. So I really take that to heart. I think change management within TA and with candidates is a balancing act too. Sentiment is changing very fast on both sides. 3 years ago, we implemented a tool that was a video recorder and a note taker that summarized notes. And my recruiters were honestly very resistant to that. And that was just transcription. Now it's a really bad day if that isn't working. So I think that sentiment changes really quickly. And if we don't embrace AI as TA and HR teams, we really risk falling behind where the industry is going and missing opportunities to create just a better and more fair experience for our candidates and a more empowering one for our own team. I don't think embracing AI, though, is about adopting every shiny tool. I feel very strongly about that, but it's shaping how we use AI in candidate-friendly, equitable ways that are aligned with our company values. So the reality is that just new norms will emerge, and what candidates are comfortable with, what innovations TA teams can come up with, that is going to change really rapidly. So it's our responsibility, even just within, the folks on this call, people in this industry, to work together and share learnings and define what those are. I love that question. Such a great question. Okay, next question. So how are you enabling and upskilling the TA team on AI and automation? Really good question. So we started training the team on experimentation last fall. This was actually a skill that we said, we're going to get better at doing experimentation. And we want to help my team members get comfortable trying things, breaking things, and learning really fast, looking at data, how to properly document an experiment and report on results. So all of the pieces of how to even just run more experiments was a dedicated half of learning for my team. This half in the fall, we're actually moving towards builder goals. So every member of my team on TA has dedicated time carved out to create or improve an automation, a workflow, or an AI use case. We just wanted to really create the space for people to do that. And then we also catalog everything that we discover. So you can see right here, we actually have a fun workflow where people can type in a prompt, what is the workflow that they're trying and how much time is it saving them and all of that sort of stuff. And then that actually pushes out to the team via Slack. So everyone in the team can see what that workflow is, how they can learn from it, and maybe even use it themselves. And so that way, no one is starting from scratch. But I think the approach here is to keep AI and automation from feeling like extra work and instead make it just a part of how we solve problems and scale our impact and showcase wins. Great question. All right. Next question. What do you feel are important skills for emerging recruiting ops and functions and orgs? And that came from NW. And actually, for this question, I want to invite someone from my team who is brilliant, Casey Fiery, who is our senior specialist of talent strategy and operations. Casey is also the brilliant mind behind a lot of these workflows. And so, Casey, why don't you answer that question?
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, so for me personally, I have just had to really lean into learning about how to solve with an AI first mindset. And for me, what that has meant has been focusing on outcomes that we want for candidates and really questioning this is how we've always done it process. And I see rec ops really evolving into something bigger than just running the processes. I see us being engineers and orchestrators and strategists who design the systems that connect our tools and that automate the repetitive work and then give recruiters real-time insights from that. And so I think the shift really matters because it lets recruiters stay laser focused on candidates and relationship building. And my role has grown into operationalizing the process so that those human moments can actually happen at a large scale. And so to make that real even more tangible, I really had to grow in my fluency in both AI and product thinking. And then for me, that's meant getting really hands on with tools like testing prompts, building workflows, figuring out how integrations work, while also learning new technical concepts like APIs or webhooks or things like that that I had never worked with before. And then also pushing myself to work closely with our partners too, both asking for help when I need it or co-designing something that is scalable for everyone. And so I think the biggest lesson I've learned in terms of rec ops is that the fastest way to build this skill is just to ship. Instead of waiting until something, I feel like something is perfect or finished, I've gotten really comfortable launching scrappy versions of my workflows, watching how recruiters use them, and then iterating on that based on what I've learned. And so I built a real comfort with shipping something at maybe like a 5 and knowing that over time it can grow into a 10 as I continue to improve it. And so that bias towards action or like shipping to learn, I think is also one of the most valuable muscles, Tracy, that I've built in terms of rec ops functions.
I mean, and I've seen you build that muscle, Casey. So shout out to you. And I love how you're thinking about that as rec ops is becoming really focused on having this product mindset of how are you shipping, how are you getting user feedback, how are you tweaking? And yeah, I absolutely love that. Casey, stay on for a second though, because the next question is AI provides advantages to TA and people ops teams, but with the rise of agentic AI, do you have concerns about job displacement or replacement? Could you share your thoughts on the ethical implications of AI usage in recruiting and people ops? Thank you for that question. So I don't know, Casey, do you think you'll be replaced?
I mean, I sure hope not. But no, I mean, if anything, I feel like my job has become even more important with the rise of AI because everything just has to be so airtight and seamless, and implementations just have to be super duper thought through. And so, no, I see my role as changing and evolving, and if anything, getting more important to the backbone of recruiting with the rise of AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think roles are disappearing as much as they're changing shape. And yeah, it is true that like certain companies might eventually need fewer recruiters for certain transactional tasks. But I think we'll actually potentially even need more operators or recruiters that can also be operators who can build and connect and optimize systems. And so I do think at some point we'll see teams becoming leaner, but I also think those roles are becoming a lot more interesting. Recruiters, not just as strategic advisors, but probably becoming more deeply embedded with teams, almost like, you know, some of the HRBPs too. So you could see sourcers as talent attraction engineers, which is a phrase I heard recently, who can oversee a whole suite of agents supporting insights and outreach, right? Or you might have coordinators who are responsible for the entire candidate experience and not just scheduling. But with more AI, I think companies that will start to stand out are going to be thinking about how the human and personal aspects of the experience will still be top notch for top candidates too. So, and I love this quote that we can bring up on the screen from our CTO, Brian Helmick. He says, you know, you can delegate the tasks, but you can't delegate the accountability. And that is 100% true, and it guides everything we do at Zapier. I mean, people are responsible for people related decisions, which is basically everything in HR. So humans will always continue to make the decisions in hiring, promotions, and performance. The ethical opportunity here is to give people better, faster, and maybe more complete information so their decisions are informed, they're fair, and they're equitable, while ensuring that AI is used to support people and not replace them. So I really like AI for research. I like it for data gathering. I like it for insights from the data I already have. And I like it for automation support as well. But humans should always be the ones making decisions. So yeah. All right. Let's jump into AI use cases and impact. Okay. So we're going a little bit more granular. The next question here is, what are the areas in your TA team and workflows where you've introduced AI and seen the biggest impact? Okay. I'm going to talk about this in two ways. So one, I think we're seeing impact at two different levels. On the ground, recruiters and rec ops folks like Casey are getting really, really good at finding the operational day-to-day use cases. Things like feedback assistance or interview note summarization, candidate emails, stuff like that. Things that take the repetitive work off their plate. So here's a really good example on the screen. This is from Tori Criswell, a senior recruiter on my team. She created this email agent, which she has said now saves her anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours every single week, just by answering a lot of the candidate questions that she gets with all of the recs that she has. So that's just a super easy example of our recruiters, going back to that adoptive AI, our recruiters are finding great use cases that are really saving their time and letting them focus on the things that they want to focus on first. We also have a ton of examples from recruiters using the AI workflows natively in tools. So in your ATS, there's probably certain AI tools that they have. Our recruiters are really trying to double down on those and saving many hours a week, which does add up. But I think the second piece that I would share is at the leadership level, we're looking at entire workflows and we're asking, okay, how do we automate and integrate this from start to finish? So here's an example. Let's take a chunk of our like later stage process, reference checks. So we're trying to connect scheduling and context gathering and follow up and then analysis into one continuous process. And once live, this is a work in progress. Once live, this will not only save us time, but also hopefully introduces a layer of insight gathering that we didn't have before. So how did we do this? It was almost embarrassingly simple. We did it during a people team mini hackathon at our company summit. So Casey and I were actually in the same group, and we literally typed into our Copilot, what we wanted to build, and it gave us a pretty incredible starting point. And we got like an 80% draft done of the workflow in 45 minutes. Again, people who are not technical. So we can actually go to showing what this reference system looks like and how we created this. We'll kind of tee this up. And so literally just got into, this is at Zapier, got into Canvas, said, build us a reference check system that, would allow us to be a lot more tailored, a lot more focused on what we needed Zapier. It spit out, here's how I would create a reference check system. And then we were able to say, okay, we might want to add these things. Maybe we'll take out these things. Let's start building it. And then in Canvas, it actually just built the whole thing for us. What's really cool about this is then we were able to go in and like really monitor every single piece of the process. Okay, what is the information we want to gather from the candidate? How do we want candidates to submit their references? How do we want this to be collected? How do we want this to be sent to hiring managers? And so rather than say, okay, we have all of these manual things that recruiters have to do, and then we use our third-party reference check tool and we somehow get that information back into our ATS, we're starting to build a workflow that connects all of that together. So again, while this is a work in progress, I have a lot of hope for things like this because it allows us to orchestrate at a higher level a bunch of different things that take a lot of manual time. So that is in some like where I'm seeing some of the biggest transformation happen and start to happen and save us the most time. It's just building it all together. All right, let's do the next question. If there was an AI tool, if there's one AI tool TA professionals should be using, what should it be and why? I mean, Zapier, I would say Zapier. And honestly, but truly, and not just because I work here and because my manager's on the call, but because Zapier is really uniquely positioned to orchestrate AI across multiple tools. So most of TA Tech now has built-in AI features, right? But those tend to operate in silos. And Zapier lets you connect them. So you need some sort of AI orchestration tool, whether that's Zapier or something else in general, because it allows you to create workflows that pass information between systems and layer AI in ways that actually change how the work gets done. And that's where I think orchestration is really where the transformation happens. And so just to show you one of my favorite recent use cases, this is a headcount approval process. I know every TA leader out there may think that headcount approval processes and coordinating between execs and finance and your recruiting team can be a bit of a headache. This is literally my favorite thing that Taylor on our team built on the people team. And so basically what this does, it allows executives to share the details of their headcount request in a Google Sheet. Then a Slack is sent with that information to me and to our head of finance. And then we're able to get context that we need and approve it directly in Slack with one click of a button. When it's approved, the job is created in ChartHop, and then the message goes to the recruiting leader. So we're going to show you how this works because I think this is one of the things where I obviously think it's like magic. So let's pull up that demo. I couldn't do a live demo because of information. So we use a very simple Google spreadsheet because our headcount form doesn't allow us to collect all the information we need. So an executive would go in, this is the exec, they're putting in their headcount request, they're typing the word yes, saying, send this to Tracy and send this to finance. Then I get a Slack a couple minutes later. It will show that it's pending. I'll get a Slack a couple minutes later and it'll say, hey, Tracy, Brian, like, here's a role. This is obviously a test role. Here's the details of the role. Do you want to approve it? Yes or no? I'm able to go in, or my head of finance goes in, we approve the role, one click of a button. Okay, what happens from there? Then automatically this gets updated in this thing that says it's approved. It's added to ChartHop, which is where we add our headcount. And then it also links to the Slack where we might have had a conversation about the role. So all of that is documented there. I don't do any of that. It just is automatically created within our headcount planning tool. And then it goes to our recruiting leaders. They're able to see it. They click a button if they want to send a hiring plan, and they're able to go to where the role is, and they can send the hiring plan off to the hiring managers. So exec request, one click of a button from me, recruiting leaders get it, one click of a button from them, hiring plan is off to the hiring team. Tons of time saved. I will say, and thank you for showing that video, Ryan. I will say that there's so many aspects of this that we are still tweaking. So I don't want to say that we've got it completely figured out. There was a question that was also about what hasn't worked or what AI tools have failed. And this one workflow, the AI powered hiring plan, we're still tweaking, but I would never consider this a failure just because that's the beauty of AI. Like, we can keep iterating. The intelligence is only growing. So even with our AI powered hiring materials, what happens after that, hiring manager, or sorry, that recruiting manager clicks the button and sends the hiring plan off to the hiring team, we're still tweaking that. But this is going to be very powerful. You can kind of see and hear basically what happens is the hiring manager is able to type in, some intake questions into a chat bot, and then it generates a whole Google document that has the job description, the interview questions, some rubrics. It gets you we've seen maybe 70% of the way there. So they still need to make some tweaks, obviously, and oversee it. It creates a hiring Slack channel. So all of the interviewers that have been tagged can be on that. So that's going to be incredibly powerful. And we're still tweaking that to ensure that it's calling upon our repository of roles we've already hired and referencing those to ensure that intelligence is getting better and better. So still in the works, but that one's done by Cecilia Garza on my team. And it's just honestly quite incredible. So that's a good one. Casey, I'm going to turn it over to you because I think there's another really cool one that we've premiered recently about our candidate cultivation agent. And so we can show this. The first part I'll just say before you go into more of your demo is the candidate cultivation agent is awesome. It's sort of a two-part system. One is we want to build a stronger connection with candidates, and we want to ensure that we're able to give candidates content that is tailored to them. So there's two parts to this. The first thing that we have is in Slack. If anyone on our team sees a very cool article or blog post or a YouTube video that might be interesting for a candidate, they just have to click a specific emoji, as you can see in the animation here. And then the agent creates the content, reads the blog or whatever it is, and adds a row into a spreadsheet saying, okay, here's what this content is, here's the link to it, and even here's a little blurb you can send a candidate who might be interested in that. So that's all compiled in a spreadsheet. And where Casey's going to go next is show you what happens after that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Tracy. So yeah, after that, we have an agent that you can open on the side of any candidate profile. And the first thing it does is it's going to review all of the candidate's background, experiences, interests, everything that we have on the candidate inside of Ashby, including feedback forms, truly everything. It's going to read it all. From there, it's going to go read a separate Zap that pulls all of the candidates' motivations and potential hesitations that they may have for the job or for Zapier from all of their Bright Hire transcripts, which transcribes all of our interviews. So then with all of that information, it'll summarize all of the candidates' motivations and all of their barriers for the recruiter to review. Then you can see in the Giphy that the recruiter has the option to say yep, this aligns with what I've seen, or no, they're also nervous about XYZ and excited about ABC. So the recruiter then adds their own personalized input. The agent from there checks our content hub, which Tracy just showed you, of everything people have automatically pulled that they would love to include. Looks at that, looks at Zapier's website for webinars or potentially even in-person events that may match the candidate's location, any interests, any barriers that they shared. And then it combines all of that information, selects the top 2 that would be most meaningful to the candidate, and puts it in a warm and kind email for you to just be able to send with the click of the button. And I think what's really cool for this is not only does it speed up like writing an email, but it really adds in different layers of intelligence, just takes it to a different level of depth in being able to really analyze what motivates the candidate and what their barriers are, and then saves the recruiter the time from going through all of these different websites to find what might be best.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. And again, you can see the AI orchestration aspect of being able to connect different tools and workflows is honestly where I think we're going to see the most gains and save the most time and really change the experience. So thanks, Casey. That's awesome. Okay, next question. How do you ensure an equity-forward approach when utilizing AI in recruiting? And how do we ensure all candidates have an equitable experience? Love this question. I absolutely think equity starts with designing systems very intentionally and transparently. And also humans carry bias, often unconsciously. So I don't want to assume that a manual system has less bias than an AI powered one, because as we know, what you put into it is what you get out of it. So we really want to build processes that support equity and have human intent, but machine-like precision. So what I mean by that is that a human is always accountable for the outcomes and the decisions and makes the decisions, but AI supports with the consistency so that even humans don't even have. I mean, how many recruiters can be as thoughtful about the 600th application they review at the end of the day as the 6th one that they reviewed after their morning coffee? It is like inherently really tricky. And so I think that's where AI assistance can come in to ensure that there's an equitable process, that we're really ensuring that we're giving all candidates a fair shake. I also think there's another one, and we can show this, which is a very quick automation that we have, because humans also make errors. And there are some things that we just want to be sure that we don't drop the balls on and that are really important for inclusivity and equity. So here's a simple example. Reasonable accommodation requests is something very normal that happens during the hiring process. We want to make this very simple. So automating reasonable accommodation workflows ensures that if a candidate submits a request, it's never lost, it's never delayed, it immediately goes to be reviewed by the right people, and that we can ensure that we can help that candidate get what they need without worrying that it might fall through the cracks. So that's one that we really love too, just to ensure that we're providing candidates with what they need. It's a great question. Similarly, we got a second question that said, in a world that becomes so data-driven and AI first, how do you put value on your gut feeling? I could say a lot about this, but I will say that hiring is both a science and an art, and recruiters bring such deep company knowledge and cultural context and intuition that leads them to make decisions and demonstrate great judgment. And that intuition can be very valuable. But in my opinion, it should never replace evidence-based decision-making. So a gut feeling should be a signal to investigate further and not a verdict. What I mean by that is AI can help here by testing that instinct against objective data. If your gut tells you that something feels off or it feels great, AI tools can help you validate it by analyzing past performance patterns, interview notes, and other signals to ensure that your decision is grounded in evidence and not an unconscious bias. So I think that's, again, where AI can be really helpful, is it can scan large databases, it can uncover systemic challenges or trends, and when orchestrated well, it can actually help level the playing field by giving us better insights and flagging issues early. So the goal is human judgment informed by AI insights so that decisions are both, human-centered, but also equitable too. So I love that. All right, next question. What metrics are you tracking to identify improvements and challenges with an AI-first approach? Great question. So honestly, this hasn't really changed too much. I mean, I'd love to hear in the chat from other leaders who are tracking different things, because I think we're still learning on this front. But at this point, we're still tracking similar core recruiting metrics as we have before. And that's because we think AI shouldn't change what matters. It just helps us improve it. So we're tracking quality of hire, time to fill, interviews per hire, the cost of interviews per hire. And of course, we have our candidate experience metrics and our capacity modeling as well. So those are kind of some of the big ones. I think that's going to feel very, like on par with what we do right now for many of you. I think the difference is that how quickly and how accurately we can act on those metrics is shaped by AI. So it helps us spot the trends faster. We can kind of test improvements and move more quickly. So right now we haven't changed the metrics, but we just want to have better performance against the ones that already matter most. Okay. I know we are going to start to run up on time, so I'm going to try to hit some of these awesome tactical questions very quickly. But as we go into this last section, just remember to add in any questions because we might be able to get some live. And also, I have awesome teams of folks, Bonnie and Taylor and Savannah and Cecilia, who are on deck to also answer as many of those as possible in the Q&A box. So please feel free to do that. And also chat in with your opinion, because I think a lot of these tactical strategies are just our opinion at Zapier right now. Very curious to hear what you all are learning too. So the first one, what would you say to candidates who need to break through the ATS? With hundreds of applicants, how are recruiters determining who to meet in real life? Honestly, this is such a challenge. If any of you have figured it out, I'd love to hear how others are approaching it. I don't know about you all, but I would say like 95% of our applications are now perfect fits with our JD, and some are literally the JD reworded. So this is tough. It will get harder as AI gets better. We've identified the pain point of recruiters spending too much time on application review and recruiter screens, meeting candidates who we think look perfect on paper, but when we dig in just a little bit more, it's really clear that the substance isn't there. So right now, we're looking for solutions to reduce the noise at the top of the funnel and get the serious candidates in front of our team faster. So for us at Zapier, we're likely going to pilot agentic recruiters as a 1A stage for recruiter screens in the hopes that it can help candidates shine who are really legit and are our top serious candidates. We're hoping that it will kind of cut out the noise of any fake candidates, fraudulent candidates, of which we have many, and give candidates who are excellent even more attention from recruiters. So that way, recruiters will still do application review. Then they'll move a larger group of folks for initial review with an agentic recruiter who can kind of go in depth, and then recruiters would review those notes and decide who to move forward. So it's a bit more time and actual conversations with people who have those skills. So all to say is that's not a direct answer to your question, but I do think as an industry, we have to figure out, like, we're not getting the signal that we need from resumes. We're not getting the signal that we need from applications by themselves. And our recruiters don't have time to meet with every single person to give them a fair shake. So this is a place where we could say, what's a technological solution that can still be transparent and equitable and fair and keep recruiter decision-making at the forefront that can also help us cut through the noise? So we haven't started that experiment yet. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. We're planning to experiment and be transparent with candidates of why we're doing that. Okay, next question. When it comes to hiring for engineers, we get a lot of scam applications. So do we. Their CVs are extremely tailored to the job ad, and recruiters who have never dealt with this type of scam get fooled. Is there a way to prevent this? So this is, I'm going to pass it over to Casey quickly because this is her work, and I think it's brilliant, our fraud detections app here.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, so this is definitely something we are also seeing more of, especially in engineering, where AI just makes it so easy to submit a polished and fraudulent application. And we realized that like manually spotting them wasted a ton of recruiters' time if they were even catching them at all. And because this trend came on so quickly, our tech stack didn't have systems in place to flag it early. So the onus really was only on the recruiter. And so earlier this year, I built this fraud detections app that checks a candidate's information, various pieces that we get like IP address, location they submit, phone number, etc. It enriches that data using some external tools, and then it runs it through an AI step in my Zap to look for any abnormalities. So for example, a candidate may say that they're based in Texas, but their IP address shows that they're in France. And so then from there, we use a code by Zapier step to categorize any surface risks into risk levels. So a single flag, like they might just be traveling. But when there are multiple things stacking up, that's something a recruiter really should look into. And so this workflow has been a huge help in filtering out the noise so that recruiters can really focus on having genuine conversations with candidates. And then beyond this workflow, we've even created practical guides for recruiters and interviewers that outline common red flags, things you can look for, suggested questions. And this mix of automation at the front end plus enablement in the interview process has been really key for us in being able to make the judgments that we need to make.
Awesome. Thanks, Casey. And that template is available on our website, and people can just grab that off the shelf, especially if they use Zapier. It's free to use. So thanks, Casey. Thanks so much. Okay, last question here that we pulled out. With both employers and candidates using AI, are reference checks reaching a point where they are more essential than the interview? Thanks, Clint, for that question. I mean, in my opinion, equally important at the very least. I think that it really depends on the balance of internal versus external signal that you want. And so at Zapier, we do 3 to 5 references as standard for any role. And who we ask to talk to is really specific. So for different roles, it might be the manager or the stakeholder or the direct reports. And we rolled out some of those reference checks being actually live for the whole company in early 2025. Yes, they take more time, but they've been a lifesaver in detecting issues early, whether that's something like skill gaps that impact others to outright candidate fraud. So I do really think that in a world where interview answers might not even be in the candidate's own words because you're so enabled by AI, reference checks give us authentic real world insight, in how someone works, how they collaborate, how they deliver results. And so it's a layer of truth that is harder to fake and one that we expect to keep growing in importance. So this is a recent post from our CEO, who honestly is the biggest advocate of hiring and, especially hiring well. And he's a big advocate of our team. His take on reference checks may be a little extreme in terms of numbers as for our executive hires, but I think the spirit is really right of what he's saying. It is critical, and that's why he does a lot of them for executive hires. All right, we are, I think, at time. Ryan, I'm going to pass it to you because I don't know if we have time for live Q&A, but try to get as many of the touch on the questions that we had as possible.
Here we go. Okay, there I am. Hey, everybody. Yeah, let's dive in. Tracy, if you're good to go, let's just answer these, and we'll definitely stop at the top of the hour because we've got a bunch of good questions here.
Okay, great.
Still on the call. Upvote them, and I'm going to go by most voted. And if anyone else, Tracy, if you see questions you like, let's take those. The top one I think we hit. You talked a lot about filtering for fake candidates during the screening process. So maybe a more specific one here is, do you think ATS resume screening is still effective in the age of AI, and what do you think will as we go?
I think that it can be helpful now. We use some assistance in helping prioritize and match candidates in our ATS too. Again, recruiters still review every application. And so I think that what's challenging is that resumes are just giving us a lot less signal. So at Zapier, we're already resume optional. And outside of just the pure facts of where someone works and how long they were there, which I do think is very important to understand, I think that the resume is not giving us what we need. And so when you have candidates using AI to create a resume that looks perfect, and then you're having ATS resume screening to judge on if that resume looks perfect, compared to the job description, the signal is canceling each other out. So I don't think that that's going to be sustainable. I think that it's something we'll need to replace it. And again, we don't know what that is, but we are going to potentially experiment with agentic AI in the screening process because it can go deeper and ask follow-up questions. And that's really the information that our recruiters need.
Totally. And I loved your point about, certain things being signal and not a verdict around gut feeling even, but even in that process, right? Sometimes you're just looking for new signals to investigate a little bit deeper. And I think that's where some of the agentic AI can come in that process.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Let's move on. Question here from Mega. How do companies that are running really lean talent teams without recruitment ops resources invest in AI to automate their systems and processes? I mean, Tracy, you've been here for a number of years, so I think you've seen also probably the team scale this out as the team's grown, the company's grown. So you've probably seen a good threshold here.
Yeah, I think what's really cool, and I think Casey's a great example, a number of folks on our team are a great example, is that anyone can build this. Right now is the time where AI tools are so accessible to non-engineers and non-builders. And I talk to TA leaders a lot, and sometimes they have a team of 3. Sometimes the team is themselves. And they're like, I'm the one recruiter and I'm trying to run this whole function. And I think what's very exciting about that right now is if you have tools, and whether that's Zapier or other tools that you can access that allow you to do some of that no code, low code building, you can actually build a lot of this yourself. It just requires you to kind of poke around a bit. The other thing I'll say is that most of our tech stack will have certain AI features. So how can you maximize those? How can you maximize the AI features your ATS has? And that, if you use BrightHire, MetaView, how do you maximize those? So I would look there first, but just know that it's very simple to go in and create a custom GPT that your whole entire TA team can use for free. And you can use that to start building some workflows that really work for you. And of course, Zapier allows you to do more of that connection, but it doesn't take a lot of additional people to do that.
Totally. I think, just to touch on that one a little bit more, I think it's really easy to put off building and trying these systems. I mean, you talked a lot about experimenting. And so I think also having some strategies or tactics for how to go do that. Like one of them is I'm not someone who just goes and builds. I need to schedule time on a Friday when my workload's a little bit lighter. And Friday is a good time for me to just spend 45 minutes trying to go build something. Or here internally at Zapier, right? We just came off a hack week last week where people submit ideas and pursue them and kind of dedicate some time. So it does take, corner your calendar, condense the building into certain periods of time and do that regularly. And, the progress will come as you go. So I think that's important for folks as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
Right.
That's one of the barriers of being able to do this is carving out the time. So if you can make it a priority, it really just takes, it will be faster than you think to not only build your confidence in the AI, but also create some really cool products.
Yeah. And maybe one other thing, seeing lots of people get started as well, is start small, start simple. Don't try and tackle the hardest, nastiest problem you have, right? Go build something small and you'll learn a few skills and then either advance that one or pick something slightly bigger the next time. I think it's easy to get frustrated if you go try to take on the biggest, hardest problem you got. Nice. Okay. Let's see. Maybe this is a good one from Bharat here. You obviously talked about Zapier, but what are some of the other AI tools that the talent team is using here? Whether they be LLMs or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll be very transparent. So we use Ashby as our ATS, and I think their roadmap is getting really exciting around how they're thinking about utilizing AI also as sort of an all-in-one platform. They are incredibly conscious to be very compliant with all of the EU, California, Colorado, legislation. So feel really good about that. I think that, their roadmap, everybody is still in beta. Everyone is still testing things. I've been also really impressed with BrightHire, which we use, because I think that their interview intelligence is just getting better and better, and our ability to gain insights by recording and transcribing those interviews, the rich insights we can gain from candidates' own words to be able to go back and reference that and utilize that and surface it to hiring managers have been awesome. Again, I think, any sort of AI orchestration tool is really important. And then honestly, just day to day, if you ask my team, I think they're using agents in Zapier, they're using custom GPTs, they're using, different tools that they use for note taking, whether that might be the Zoom features or Granola or things like that. So I think there's a whole gamut of different interesting tools. Again, we've been piloting a bunch of AI agentic recruiters or agentic recruiter companies. And so I'm really excited to kind of see what's going to be happening there too.
Yeah, as a BrightHire user, for someone who's done a lot of interviews, I have my notes and I've started making my notes more like my personal experience of the interview. Ooh, I like this. I want to learn more about this, because I also know BrightHire's got me on the back end of stuff I might forget. So my notes have become much less like a catalog of what's happening in the interview and more of a, okay, here's what I'm reacting and hearing in these conversations, which has been super helpful, honestly. Yeah.
Especially when you have back-to-back interviews, all day, like many of our recruiters do. Can you really remember everything? And being able to lean on transcription and AI to even just be able to go back and review, again, allows for you, I imagine, to be able to make a better decision with real evidence and information. So
totally. And get my my verdict in our 24-hour mandate after the interview.
Right. You
Because
got to get those scorecards in 24 hours.
yeah, an interview on a busy day, you go on to all the other things, and then you're like, oh, I have to do the notes, I have to submit, so it really helps.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Let's see, just going through here. Oh, I like this one because I think it's where did it go? Sorry, the questions are jumping around for me. The question was, in, I guess, regulatory environments or just with sensitive data about clients, how do y'all think about the automations you're building? I think what I've heard Brandon say as well is, there are certain workflows you experiment and other ones that maybe we're not ready for. But I don't know if you have any perspective on certain areas you just haven't walked into yet because you want higher confidence with
Oh,
AI.
yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, I think because the laws on AI usage in the HR space are still emerging across the globe, we're working really closely with our legal and diversity, inclusion, belonging, and equity teams to really ensure our use cases, to check our use cases against the evolving legal requirements, as well as any ethical concerns that we might have. And so we do have some very clear lines here. I don't know if this is exactly getting at your question, but for example, I've said this many times, humans are decision makers. You can delegate the task, but you cannot delegate the accountability. And so we are on the hook for all of our decisions that involve people. We also know that from a data privacy perspective, we do not put our PII information into a lot of our tools. So sometimes when we're gathering insights, we're stripping a lot of that out too. So there's a lot of guidelines that we have within Zapier on the people team to help our people team know how to use AI appropriately. That's one of the things that I actually really like that we did at Zapier is that before it was before we said, everybody go run wild and, practice using AI tools, we started with the guidelines and says, this is how you can use it. This is how you can't use it. And I think when you give that to people, they actually can run a lot further faster because they understand where the red tape is.
Totally. I was actually just talking to a customer last week who essentially in their Zap, before they send survey data with all this PII over into their custom GPT that they have, they actually strip out the PII, move the actual feedback in, have OpenAI analyze it, and then they reunite it after that step. And they probably don't even need to do that, but they're just being really thoughtful about what data is going where and why. And within a Zap, they're able to basically command how that happens, which is pretty cool. Nice. We have other questions, which we'll follow up later with 3 minutes left. Tracy, I'll hand it back to you to kind of wrap us up, a couple calls to action for this group, and then close us out. So I'll leave the stage and leave it to you here.
Awesome. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining. And if you want to learn more, if any of this has been interesting for you, we do have a couple of very cool opportunities coming up. So one of them is an awesome member of our people team, Emily Mabey. She's a senior learning designer. She is conducting these amazing hands-on workshops on how to build AI agents or chatbots, specifically with HR leaders and talent leaders in mind. So again, I think we'll send this out, but there's a QR code. You can sign up. She's awesome and just an engaging speaker. I think you'll love her. And then the second thing is that we also have our AI for HR use case booklet. You can grab that from the link on the screen, but also we have that on our website. And so again, we don't want to gatekeep. We want to open source as much of what we have as possible, because I really think that's how we, as an industry and as a function of HR and people and TA, that's how we really grow. So we're happy to put that out there and would also love to learn from you how you're using it. And then finally, I know that Brandon and a lot of our people team members are going to be speaking at our user conference, which is at the end of September, on September 25th. It's free, it's virtual. It's called Zap Connect, and there's going to be tracks specifically for HR. So you'll get to see more workflows and try some ways to build yourself. So those are some cool opportunities, but overall, I mean, just thank you everybody for attending. I know this was jam-packed. There were so many good questions and we just tried to answer as many as possible. But I think if there's any one thing to leave you with, it's just that the industry is changing so rapidly. I'm trying to stay on top of it. I think we're doing some really cool things to experiment at Zapier, but everything's going to change in a matter of months, weeks, minutes. And so my hope is that if you came to this, please continue to share out with me and with each other of what you're learning and what you're experimenting with, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to create a really empowering TA team and also a consistent, fair, equitable, and inspiring experience for candidates too. So I really appreciate everyone joining and sharing your thoughts, and thank you.